Hello, third graders. Mrs. Hales here with another art lesson for you. Today we're going to learn to weave. You may have done this before in another art class, but it's always a good idea to do this every year in art class because it's good to practice. So we're going to weave with paper today, and I'm going to show you just quickly how to prepare your paper if you need to cut it. Or you can have a helper or somebody in your house help you. If you're at school, this should already be pre-done for you. So there's only 3 different ways that textiles or fabric is produced. All fabric is either woven, knitted, or newer, more synthetic fabrics are like compressed or pressed. Most of us today wear knitted fabrics. My t-shirt is knitted, my sweater is knitted. If you have a cotton blanket on your bed, it was probably well, it could have been woven or knitted, but anything that stretches a lot and gives is knitted. So things that are woven are things like blue jeans. If you have a dress shirt that you wear to church or someplace fancy and it has buttons and a collar with button down, that is woven. Sometimes wool or cotton blankets can be woven. Weaving has been around since they don't know exactly when it started. People started weaving fabrics together, but they're thinking as long as 23,000 years ago, people started weaving things for clothes and for like bedding and things like that. One of the reasons that no one knows how long people have been weaving fabric is because fabric doesn't last very long. It might last 100 or 150 years if it's preserved and taken care of, but it doesn't last, so it's hard to tell how long weaving has been around. Most cultures have a tradition of weaving. The Native Americans in this country have a long tradition of weaving. People started weaving like grasses and reeds and things into baskets, and then the tradition continued and evolved to include clothing. Today, almost everything that's woven or knitted is done on a machine. Whatever you are weaving, clothing or blankets or whatever you're weaving, there's a warp thread which goes up and down, and there's a weft thread which goes left to right. And you can see in this diagram, the weft thread goes left to right, and then it loops back around and goes the other direction, right to left. So these are called warp and weft. One of the things that helps me remember which direction the fibers go is weft rhymes with left. So I remember that the weft fibers go left to right and the warp fibers go up and down. Supplies you're going to need today include about a 9 by 12 inch piece of colored construction paper. You need some 1 inch by 9 inch strips of construction paper. You need to have 3 different colors. If you only have 2 different colors of construction paper or 1 color construction paper, then you can improvise. You can use grocery bags, you can use newspaper, you can use copy paper, or you can use construction paper. Then you need some masking tape or Scotch tape. And if you need to measure for your strips, you're going to need a pencil, a ruler, and a pair of scissors as well. But if you're at school, you just need paper, strips, and tape. So to prepare your warp paper or the warp fibers, we're going to draw a line the width of the ruler at the top of our paper. We're not going to cut past that line. And then on the bottom of my paper, I'm going to measure every inch. I'm going to put a little dot. So I'm going to put a little dot by the 1, 2, line up the edge of your paper with the 0 on your ruler. My paper is 8.5 inches, so I'm going to have 8 dots with a little bit left over at the end. Most of you will probably be able to have a 9 by 12 inch paper, so you'll have 9 dots spaced evenly at the bottom. Then at the top of my paper, where that line is that I just made the width of my ruler down, I'm going to measure every inch again. And then I'm going to connect those lines that were, an inch from the edge of my paper, and I'm going to draw a line. So I'm going to line up my ruler on both of those dots at either end of my paper and make a line. This line connects my dots. And then what I'm going to do is cut on each one of these lines all the way up from the bottom of my paper to that line that I drew at the top of my paper. In other words, you want to leave like a tab at the top that's going to connect all your strips. To do the weaving, I like to have my paper facing or laying horizontally in front of me. So I like to have the part where the paper is all stuck together on the left. And then when I weave, I'm just going to take my strips and I'm going to go over that first weft paper and under the next, over, under, over the next one and under the next one. So I'm working from top to bottom and I'm just sliding that weft strip of paper over and under through the warp papers. So in this case, the warp strips are going left to right and the weft strips are going top to bottom. Now, for this next slip of paper, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to go under that first stripe of paper and then over the next one and then under and over. And so I'm constantly checking myself to make sure that if it was green before, now it's orange. And then down to the next row, if it was orange, then it's turquoise or whatever your next color is. So it's looking like a checkerboard. Now you have to push that turquoise paper up really close to the green paper. Now what do you think I'm gonna do? That's right. I'm going to follow with my green strip, keeping with my pattern. I'm going to follow with the original green strip. So I'm going to go over the first row, then under, then over the third row, then under. And I'm going to continue that pattern all the way down. Working this way with my orange paper horizontal, you can kind of just slide those weft strips under each strip of orange paper that you need to. So for the fourth stripe or strip, I'm going to follow the same pattern that I did with my first turquoise stripe or my second piece of paper. And I'm going to start under that first orange piece of paper and then over and then under and then over. So you're constantly in your head saying to yourself over, under, over, under, over, under. And then you're checking your work to make sure it looks like a checkerboard. Even though it's an orange, green, and turquoise checkerboard, it still should look like a checkerboard. And you just continue with that pattern until you're finished. I like to check myself after each piece of paper that I weave because sometimes you miss one or you make a mistake and you don't want to have to undo them all to get back to that mistake. You're going to keep weaving these warp strips in until you can't fit any more in. You don't want one hanging off the edge. So you might have a little bit of your original warp fibers or strips. You might have some of that left. And then you're going to put a piece of tape on this end. Here I am pushing these strips back next to each other all the way to the left so that there's no gaps in between them. And then I'm gonna flip it over and it should be in reverse. It should look good. And then I'm gonna tape that right side where all the pieces are hanging out just so the weft strips don't fall out. That's probably all you're gonna have time for today, boys and girls. Don't forget to write your name. It's a good idea to put your name on the tape or on the far right-hand corner of your work. You potentially could cover that up next week, but we'll talk about that next class. I will see you next time.